World #1 snooker player for 8 years in a row, from April 1990 to May 1998. 36-time ranking event winner, 5-time UK champion, 6-time Masters champion, and 7-time champion of the world. It's all about Stephen the Golden Boy Hendry. Stephen Hendry is rightfully considered one of the greatest players of all time. The list of his records is truly remarkable. Titles, century breaks, prize money, and so on and so forth. It took Stephen only 10 years to win 7 World Championship titles, still a record no one has been able to beat. Stephen grabbed his first World Championship title in 1990 when he was 21, beating Jimmy White in that final. 2 years later, the title was his again, starting Hendry's 5-year dominance in the World Championships that continued up to 1996. In 1999, Stephen won his last World Championship title, winning over the future 3-time World Champion Mark Williams. Stephen caught the snooker bug when he was 12. His family was visiting his aunt for Christmas, 2 weeks before his turning 13. Hendry was given a child-sized snooker table as a present. A 12-year-old child did like the gift. Stephen admits he fell in love with snooker the moment he took the cue in his hands. The table that was meant to change his whole life was put in his bedroom pressed against the wall, which made it difficult to play certain shots. But the child turned out to be a natural. Snooker took up all Stephen's free time. A couple of shots before going to school in the morning, a non-stop playing afterwards, interrupted only for having a snack. It took Hendry only 2 weeks to score his first 50 break. Stephen, who constantly won over his father, recalls, "I was learning every day, and I liked absolutely everything about snooker." To find out how good he was, Stephen went to Pontins in Wales to play in the Stars of the Future tournament for boys under 16. The trip paid off. He won the tournament and received his first cash prize, £100. That meant his schoolwork was no longer a priority for him. He managed to pass only 2 out of 4 O levels, which meant he wasn't getting the certificate. Hendry was not hopelessly stupid, it was just snooker taking up all his time. But then Stephen had to overcome a tough time in his family life. His parents were divorcing. "The hard times taught me a lot, and pushed me too," recalled Stephen. For almost 4 months, together with his mother and brother, he was living at his grandmother's in Kirkliston before moving to a council house. It was at Stirling Snooker Club in November 1983, where Stephen Hendry's life was to be changed forever when he met an energetic, up-and-coming businessman, Ian Doyle. "I was shocked. It is something I will never forget. He moved around the table gracefully, like a gazelle. Just imagine, it was like watching some celebrity like Sinatra or Pavarotti," said Doyle. In the match, Stephen followed the opening shot by his rival Lee by a 49-point break, playing with the rest most of the time. He was relaxed and made the victory seem easy. The aura of self-confidence was already surrounding him. While driving home that evening, Lee made a spot-on comment. "The guy I was playing against will be a world champion one day." Hendry got his big breakthrough in March 1986, winning the Scottish Championship title. He beat Matt Gibson in the final that was TV broadcasted. Before his match with Willie Thorne at the 1986 World Championships in Sheffield, Stephen signed his first contract. He lost that match, but his performance was unforgettable. It was then when Stephen realized the game would give him back as much as he would give to it. The most impressive was Stephen's ability to defeat good snooker players. He beat John Parrott despite a poor start of the match and Dennis Taylor. The most beautiful was Stephen's originality. He did not copy anyone's style. Most children try to imitate their idols, but he didn't. He was no clone. His first victory was to be achieved already in 1987 at the Rothmans Grand Prix. Moreover, he secured his first win over Steve Davis after 8 consecutive failures in beating him. Then Jan Hendry won over Tony Knowles and John Parrott. In the final, he was challenged by Dennis Taylor, that incredibly popular Irishman and former world champion. Stephen, showing incredible perseverance and courage, made a comeback from 1-4 to claim the victory.
The 1987 Rothman Grand Prix champion is 18-year-old Stephen Hendry, the youngest ever winner of a major tournament.
After a series of setbacks, Stephen managed to reach the UK Championship final. On his way, he left no chances for such players as Cliff Thorburn, Willie Thorne and Steve Davis. In the final, however, there were no happy ending for Hendry as he lost 12-16 to Doug Mountjoy. To his credit, he managed to think of this defeat philosophically, saying, "If I was to lose to anyone, I'm glad it was Doug. In the afternoon session, he played better than anyone I have ever played against in my career." The 1989-90 season was a triumph for the young Scot. He won 4 ranking titles and the long-awaited trophy, his first world title. Being only 21, Hendry became the youngest champion in the Sheffield history.
And with that break of 71, Stephen Hendry brings a great championship to an end. He has beaten Jimmy White by 18 frames to 12 to become the youngest ever champion.
Ladies and gentlemen, a tremendous round of your appreciation, please, for both players, Jimmy White and Stephen Hendry.
When Hendry's game got worse, Doyle forbade his girlfriend Mandy to accompany him to tournaments. However, by the time Stephen won his first world championship they had long been together. The couple got even closer after his girlfriend's car accident in Blackpool in 1988. Next year, despite the fact that Stephen failed to defend his world title, he won 5 ranking tournaments and 2 Masters tournaments. In 1992, he grabbed back the crown of the world champion. But now there were new players to challenge him, young talents like Ronnie O'Sullivan and John Higgins. Even this didn't prevent Stephen from winning 2-3 ranking tournaments every year and again defend the world title, which meant he comfortably continued to be the world #1. In 1994, for his great sporting achievements, he was awarded an MBE. 2 years later, in 1996, he claimed his 6th world title, which put him in line with Ray Reardon and Steve Davis. In 1997, Hendry determined to win his 7th title, reached the finals without problems, but didn't manage to break down Ken Doherty's fierce resistance. The history repeated itself next season when Stephen failed to win the 7th title again. This time, his problem was Jimmy White, whom he had beat 4 times in the finals. Hendry also lost the world #1 position, something that made him no less proud than his championship titles. The first in the ranking was now John Higgins due to his Sheffield win. Many pundits, and some players too, rushed to declare that it was the end of Stephen Hendry's career. In the 1998 Masters final at Wembley, in a march with his good friend Mark Williams, Hendry was in the lead 9-6 with only 1 more frame to claim the victory. However, he wasted numerous chances to win the match and eventually lost 9-10 after the deciding frame was taken by Williams on a re-spotted black. This match is often considered to be the greatest in the snooker history.
That's in, is it? No! It will be this time, I'm sure, and that 7th Masters title. And a tremendous cheer, really deserved for young Mark Williams from Wales.
In 1999, Stephen finally won his 7th world title, but the triumph didn't make him first in the ranking. He was still winning a couple of tournaments every year, but the epoch of his unconditional dominance had been over. His play lost a little bit of its brilliance, but Hendry was still top 5 player and a tough one to beat. Stephen's start of the 1999-2000 season was good with 2 titles in the first 3 tournaments, including the British Open, where he made the 5th 147 break of his career and the first maximum in a ranking final. However, in the 2000 World Championship, to everyone's surprise, he was defeated by a rookie, Stuart Bingham. Hendry won his last ranking title in the 2005 Malta Cup when he beat Grime Dott 9-7 in the final. In the following World Championship, Stephen reached semifinals again, but was thrashed 4-17 by O'Sullivan with a session to spare. This was the heaviest defeat in the World semifinal. It was true that closer to the end of his career, Hendry was no longer the odds-on favorite in the tournaments, but he remained a dangerous opponent for any player. In 2008, for example, after an unsuccessful season, Stephen reached the World Championship semi-finals, and only one of the best performances in Ronnie O'Sullivan's career enabled him to beat Hendry. Stephen retired in 2012, his last match being a World Championship quarter-final against Stephen Maguire.
Mark crowned as champion. A marvellous moment.